Now I know what you're thinking. That color looks awesome. Even if you're not thinking that, you clicked on this video, which means you probably read the title. So what I'll ask you is, should requisite gray be your prerequisite for your interior design? How clever am I? I'm going to tell you pretty much everything you need to know about this Sherwin Williams color, as well as some color pairings that I've selected for it, so you can not only find out about the color, but also you can learn how to use it in your home with other colors. The color code is SW7023. Now that we got that, let's crack the code together. So although this series tends to focus more so on using colors inside your home, I will also mention some ways that you can use it on the exterior of your house as well at the end of the video. Let's talk about some of the nitty-gritty details of requisite gray, starting with its light reflectance value. And this is one of the first things I look at when I'm analyzing a color. Essentially, the LRV of a color is a 0 to 100 percentage that tells us how much light the color is going to reflect. We can see on the Sherwin Williams website that this color is at a 45. This pretty clearly puts it in the mid-tone category of paint colors. And I find mid-tones to be a pretty nice compromise of light and dark because it's in the middle, obviously. Not too dark that you won't be able to see where you're going in the room that you painted in, but also not too light that it'll seem like your walls are just coated with primer because they're all washed out and bland. Requisite gray definitely has a solid amount of depth, I find, and its saturation is great. It also seems to possess a pretty interesting balance of undertones. Even though it has gray in the name, I tend to classify this color as more of a mid-tone taupe. That is a color that takes a strong dose of gray and then combines it with some brown as well to give it a really earthy, almost stone-like coloration that has a lot of flexibility in most designs. Theoretically, you could incorporate it alongside the warmer brown family of colors or the more modern, cooler gray side of things too. Just keep in mind that this color will behave differently depending on which style you're going with. The undertones themselves in requisite gray are pretty darn neutral, where sometimes you might see a taupe that's favoring the green side just a bit with a yellow touch, or perhaps the purple side less so with the added amount of red. There's really no bluishness to speak of, which means there's even less of an opportunity for this color to look overly purple in a lot of cases, and I've actually accounted for that with one of my color pairings, which we will get to in a second. I find requisite gray to be a color you can throw in a lot of situations inside your home, even in something like a hallway, which usually has lighter colors being used in it. Like I said earlier, this color is a mid-tone, but as long as you give it some room to breathe or some pretty healthy lighting, it shouldn't give you too many problems. So getting to the color pairings. If this is your first time watching Color Code, you can expect 4 pairings for requisite gray. A light, a medium, a dark, as well as an off-white that you could easily use on your trim and woodwork, or on the ceiling, or anywhere you would want a corresponding white paint color. So let's start with the light color known as nice white. How can you not feel nice about going with something this nice? Nice white. Okay, I'll stop saying nice. What's nice about it, I did it again. What's great about this color is that it fits in perfectly with the brown aspect of requisite gray. Nice white also has that combination of red and gray, but because it's lighter overall, it has less actual gray colorant in it, so it won't seem quite as greeny either. Its LRV of 74 gives it enough of a difference in depth with requisite gray so the two can kind of pop off one another. And that also means you can have one sort of accentuate the other in the form of an accent wall, or maybe even upper and lower cabinets. There's also nothing stopping you from using nice white on the trim, but I have another off-white that I picked specifically for that later on. Nice white is more of an off-white because it comes with enough saturation to make it noticeable in its coloration compared to, I don't know, a high reflective white or even alabaster by Sherwin Williams. Those colors are going to be lighter and they're going to be more white than nice white. Is nice.
Whoa, very nice.
So requisite gray and nice white, those are two more natural fits. They're not totally monochromatic because there is a bit of an adjacency in their color hue. Requisite gray does take on a little more of the gray quality in the green direction. So for the mid-tone color pairing, I wanted something that just flirted with the opposite side of things in a color called swanky gray. Now, both of these colors are being classified as gray. They're also midtones, but they do possess very different undertones. You can really start to notice that the blue is being amped up in Swanky Gray, giving it a very clear purple undertone to it. It's really pulling it into that direction. This is further amplified next to Requisite Gray, which almost starts to bring forth a little more of its green undertone next to that subtle purple hue. I tend to like playing with complementary undertones sometimes, or at least offering it to you as one of the options, because I find it's easy to grab a bunch of similar or adjacent colors and just put them all together. The thing is, not everyone wants 4 different shades of beige or taupe or gray. So these two will definitely have a little more of a dynamic relationship, but just remember that you're dealing with complementary undertones, but the paint colors themselves are still fairly desaturated, all things considered. It's not like you're dealing with, I don't know, Welch's grape juice purple and Christmas tree green. And even if you were, those are technically not complementary. They're a little more closer to a triadic kind of relationship. And if you don't know what that means, no worries. We did a video on the color wheel and complementary colors, which I can leave in the cards up top. Essentially, green and purple aren't directly opposed to one another on the color wheel. They're sort of just semi-distant neighbors. Now getting to the dark color pairing, I went with another color with gray in its name, but it's not actually gray. It's definitely more of a shaded navy blue called Mineral Gray. With an LRV of 9, Mineral Gray is dark and it has a somewhat smoky quality to it that is aided by the actual gray that's in it. There's definitely much darker navy blues out there and ones with way more visual saturation. What Mineral Gray does have is a sort of dark denim feel. You won't really see much of a green undertone in this case. It's more true to blue and perhaps the slightest hint of purple in some cases. When you have something as cool as blue, this will allow Requisite Gray's warmth to come forward a bit more and feel a bit closer to brown rather than taupe or gray. Snowbound is the off-white that I would recommend in this case because it's one that I love to use with color schemes that incorporate a bit of gray, a bit of purple, a bit of blue. It really seems to tie things together and introduce a lovely bit of warmth to uplift the whole design. Its LRV is 83, so not necessarily the lightest or brightest color out there, but definitely light enough to work with these other colors we've talked about. If you were thinking of using Requisite Gray as an exterior color, I think it's actually a wonderful choice for a main body of a home, although you may see a little more of its green undertone being brought up further with all that direct, cool sunlight, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. Another thing you could do for a pretty straightforward approach to picking a main body color and a trim color is opting for its lighter neighbor, Alpaca, and one of its darker neighbors in Backdrop, or even Griffin if you want to take it a bit further, and this will give you a dramatic level of contrast and difference that you may want on the outside of your home, but it's all based on that same general category based on Requisite Gray. If you love exterior colors, I put together some color pairings for the outside of your home over here using Sherwin Williams colors as well. Let me know if there's other colors you want me to feature in a future episode of Color Code.